It's about 5 minutes till. We're waiting for everybody to get logged on. If you can see the poll, we'd appreciate it if you'd fill the poll out. Just kind of help us understand a little bit about your background and how you heard about this. And we'll start at about 2 after, allowing everybody to log on. For 25% soil sample a little bit more often. So, and then 90% it seems does some type of soil sampling. So looks like we'll get a good mix of people here who at least understand soil sampling and are moving their clients down that path, or if you're a grower, moving down that path yourself. Some prohibitions from soil sampling. Looks like about 20% still don't see the value in soil sampling. Hopefully we can address some of those questions today. Looks like about another 15% don't have the resources or the skill, or they don't believe they have the resources or skills to do it. It looks like 60% of you say you just don't have time. We see that a lot as we talk with people across the industry. The data collection side of precision ag is really a challenge, from soil sampling, tissue sampling, imagery collection. And then another probably 30%, the remaining 30%, are not sure of what to do with the results, or they think the cost is too high. So hopefully we're able to answer some of those questions today. I will put it on pause for about 1 more minute, and then we'll be beginning. We've already got 75 on today. Thanks. Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Scott Jackman from Deveron, and I am located in Grant, Kansas City, right in the center of the U.S. I know we have participants from the United States as well as from Canada, so we'll have people from both countries discussing with us today. A little bit of background about myself. I run the U.S. component of Deveron, the Deveron Veritas team, and I also do sales and marketing for our company. I'll have with us, and they'll introduce themselves, Mike from Deveron, who is a agronomist and our senior data collector, and I also have Mike from A&L, so they'll both introduce themselves. Mike Wilson, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. Mike Wilson from Ontario, Canada. I am the operations lead for Deveron and Veritas North America. Look forward to discussing with you guys today some of the ways we can help get rid of some of those hurdles in soil sample and data collection, working with your trusted advisors on the farm, and some of the benefits that A&L Labs can bring to the table. So, hello, everyone.
Yeah, Mike Fulgert, are you on?
Mike Fulgert from A&L Laboratories here in London, Ontario. I work in business development to Southwestern Ontario. On behalf of A&L Labs, I'd just like to thank everyone for their time this morning during these trying and difficult times. We are proud as a company to support our essential industry by supplying a complete line of analytical services in soils, tissues, manures, compost, and disease diagnostics, and proud to support our frontline retailers, independent agronomists, and producers alike.
So thanks, Mike and Mike. That was a good overview on A&L and their laboratory services. At Deveron, we're both a data collection and a data insights company focused purely in the precision ag world. So we don't sell hardware, software ourselves, and we're obviously not a grower. and we kind of operate in the middle there with the data collection side, collecting soil sampling, aerial imagery, tissue sampling, and then we also help some of our clients with the data insights and in understanding what the data means, how to make it useful to the grower, and then actual show them return on investment of their data on their data work. So why we're here today, obviously COVID-19 has introduced some challenges to the way we work and the way everybody is working right now. Many of your ag retail locations have had to close their storefronts. For most of us, our grower meetings have been canceled this year. Obviously the trade shows and our barbecues where we bring clients in to have discussions, those have been canceled. So we've all had to move to alternative ways at which we can talk with people. And in this sense today, we are going to do some education, taking the place of like a grower meeting on soil sampling, our understanding of how soil sampling works and our value proposition. COVID-19 remains a challenge. However, we all recognize that agriculture is a critical infrastructure. And at least in the US, the Department of Homeland Defense has said that the agriculture value chain up and down this entire supply chain is critical and must continue. And the Canadian federal government has done the same for Canadian operations. The Canadian government has deemed agriculture as critical also, and that movement is still allowed, even though Canadian clients are having movement restrictions also. So with that, we're going to move into starting to discuss our mentality of how soil sampling works. And with that, I will hand it over to Mike Wilson as our senior data collector.
Thanks, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I want to start by showing you guys some of the changes we've made to our operation over the last couple years and how we've began to collect data on a much larger scale. You can see there on the map in front of you the coverage map of North America. Go ahead to the next slide, Scott. Back one.
Sorry.
Sorry, everyone.
And bear with us, everyone, if you would, for technical difficulties here.
No, Scott, it's just still blank screen. Yep, there we go.
There we go.
Okay, go ahead to the next one if it will allow you. There we go. Sorry, everyone. As you can see there, we've got a wide variety of samplers and order collection people across North America. That allows us the ability to be quite adaptable and available at the moment's notice. Our goal is to have delivery of the soil to the lab within 2 days of the order from our retail partners and our farm customers. This makes our solution very scalable, millions of acres across North America. We have pretty robust equipment that allows us to sample pretty much every month of the year on frozen ground. Providing snow covers not too deep is not a problem. So, you know, we can have been sampling for the last couple months and are available to go today. to try to get over the big demand of spring sampling here, and to get timely results back to you guys to make those decisions with your trusted advisors before we start to go. The software we've created in the background allows us to manage the logistics of this across this wide variety of acres, and to make sure our samplers are getting the right data back to the lab, and information is passed along to our customer in as quick and efficient manner as possible. We developed some very unique and standardized sampling protocols that make sure we're collecting the right depth, the right type, and the right location, so that we can be repeatable and ensure that the right soil is going to the lab each and every time. We're able to improve the resource management to our customers. We understand that people on the farm or in our ag businesses are very critical, and this time of year we have many hats on, and soil sampling often gets pushed to the back of the pack. And as Scott mentioned in the poll this morning, over 50% of you mentioned that soil sampling doesn't get done just purely based on time. So we're here to help with that. We've developed a complete system from start to finish to help take that time restraint away, get your people doing the right things, working with the customers and making recommendations, and allowing our people to be in the fields, taking that job off your plate. It also allows for a very cost-effective data collection service. No capital investment from the ag retailer or the farmer, just a simple click of a button, order the fields, get the right people doing the right things, and then get those results back to your trusted advisor to get the recommendations in place to have a successful spring and then successful application of fertilizer. Next, Scott. So the system starts out with the digital ordering of soil sampling. That's a very simple step. You can either log on to the A&L website and order directly through A&L Canada, or you can log on to the Deveron website and place orders that way. Just simply need a shapefile or a KML of where your field is, answer a few questions on the what services and lab analysis you'd like, and work through the questions, and away we go. Right, we'll get it dispatched to a sampler and get the data to the lab as quick as possible. If there's any questions on any of that, feel free to reach out to A&L Canada or to Deveron, and we'll work you through the order process start to finish. It's quite simple. Once the data is in, all the data is cataloged in the cloud and saved there for your convenience, and can be re-downloaded from A&L at any time. A&L does offer recommendations if required by growers, or if you'd like your certified agronomist or advisor to build recommendations, that's fine too. The data can be sent out in most formats and available to you to do whatever you like. And of course, that can all be done digitally from downloading from either website, or if not compatible that way, a simple email can get the results out as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So soil testing, kind of the why should we begin to start soil testing? Next couple slides, Scott. Next one again. So soil sampling is basically the foundation of all the agronomic recommendations we make, or at least it very much should be. In many cases today, we're still doing what we've always done. We're still farming that farm average. We're still looking for something different without changing the aspects of what we're doing on the farm. If we have an unclear knowledge of what's going on in the soil underneath of our crop, how can we expect the crop to grow or change or do anything differently? We need to clearly understand that yield potential within our fields, so that we can begin to change, manage, and shape the soil to better ourselves and to better the yield that it produces. We need to stop making those blind decisions. Without a current soil test, we basically are really just guessing. We don't know what's changing across the field, and we don't know what we need to improve on to get those yield levels up to where we really want to. Surveys done from labs across North America. The IP&I group does a lot of work with this. A&L does a lot as well. It's been estimated that only about 20 to 30% of growers actually have a soil test on, or a current soil test on their farms. And that's a pretty scary number, really, when you think about it. Only 20 to 30% of us have an accurate soil test to make these decisions on the fertilizer and nutrients we're putting down. So sampling should be done on like a 3-year to 4-year interval, and to keep us in compliant with that 4R nutrient stewardship that's coming into place. And those samples should be georeferenced so we can track over time to begin to show you results like that are on the screen here now. So when we look at these maps, this was done by the IPNI. It illustrates how our fertilizer rates in some states and some provinces aren't up to snuff. We are not replacing what the crops are moving. As yields increase, as things change across, with weather and nature, new varieties, higher yields, we're not maybe keeping up with the fertilizer rates we see. So the map on the left there shows the average increase or decrease in your area based on part per million levels from soil tests collected in the labs. So all the red numbers are areas in which we are inadequately applying P to the field. We're removing more than we're putting down. On the right-hand map there, you can see what percentage of the soil tests in your area are at or below a critical soil test level. Some areas are quite alarming, and there's some real concern, and we need to find out where those areas are, which fields they are, or more importantly, which areas within a field they are. The next slide shows us the same type of 2 maps, only for potassium levels. So when we look at the map on the left-hand side, you can see same story, just a little different based on states. We have that positive or negative change in part per million levels over a 5-year period. And the map on the right begins to show us, what percentage of fields or soil tested in specific regions are at or again below that critical soil test level. So it really gives us some reason for concern and starts to drive home some of that importance around soil testing and how we can use that to start bring more value to the table, on our operations and for our customers. And if we're at a critical soil test level, there's no question that we're leaving bushels on the table and we're not being as profitable as we can be. The next graph, it kind of gives us an example of how we can and should look at each and every field when we're making a recommendation or thinking about yield. Let's use a corn crop, for example. The gray line would be our 200 bushel average. And if we're applying a straight rate nutrient application based on that field average of 200 bushels, that's what we kind of expect to see. The blue line there is our yield. Some areas of the field yielding 100 bushels per acre on the left. Areas on the right-hand side of the graph yielding 300, maybe 300 plus bushels per acre. But the average at 200, when we look at that nutrient removal rate at the center, look how much of that field we're actually farming properly and profitably. We're only targeting that small little area of that graph properly. Our opportunities as agronomists and as customers to be more profitable and better stewards in the environment are on the far left and far right. The far left is where we can save some money, where fertility rates are high and yields low, usually due to water or some other implication. And there's areas that we just don't need that much fertilizer. That fertilizer can be shifted, or also on the right side where we're actually at those critical soil test levels, and we can, by applying some more fertilizer, we build soil, we get more bushels, we get a return on our investment, and we begin to become more profitable. Next slide, Scott. So when we do this, we start to see our input line match our yield line. And I'm not saying we have to go to precision ag out of the gate, but at least start managing field to field more specifically so that we're matching the inputs more based on the field performance. That gets us more in line with the 4R nutrient stewardship. That makes our input investment more profitable. We're getting that return that we expect from those dollars we're spending. And soil sampling is that key way to ensure that we are matching the right amount of nutrient to the yield being harvested from a specific area, and we are maximizing the benefit on both cases there. Next slide, Scott. So to understand your soil, usually we need to get into a little bit more precision than a bulk sample. the level of precision in which you choose, I think, really represents the goals and the objectives you have for your farm operation. The example we'll show you in the next couple slides will be more of a bulk type testing scenario. But when you look at site-specific sampling, for those in the group that are interested in that, we have a full line of services in partnership with A&L to help drive to that next level and to get to that resolution that you guys are looking for, so that you can start to leverage the latest tech on the farm, the equipment in the cab. You can get a better visual representation of your fields, so that when you begin to build nutrient recommendations, feeding prescriptions, nitrogen prescriptions, that equipment that you have in the cab actually can start to work at the level you're looking for. You can use it to its full potential. And without identifying those nutrient limitations, it's very hard to get that response and to make those investments on the farm profitable. Next, Scott. So if we look at how much, if we think of a bulk sample, if we look at those assumptions on the bottom, where bulk sampling represents about 20 acres per sample as a bare minimum. We're going to resample every 3 years. We're looking at a corn, soybean, wheat rotation. The soil test for the farm on that bulk sample is rated in the good category for P&K, and the recommendations we're going to build here are going to be for like a 3-year approach with a slight build, but not being overly or too aggressive, right? So when we look at a corn crop, you know, those are the type of nutrients we're going to start to see as a requirement: 240 pounds of N, 80 pounds of P, 190 pounds of K. Soybeans, 20 pounds N, 60 P, 60 K, and winter wheat, 105, 180 respectively, for the total requirement at the bottom. Next, Scott. So when we try to break that down into what does that actually mean cost-wise for a producer, and we evaluate those numbers more specifically, you can really start to see how this adds up and how this very low cost of a soil sample helps bring us to that, you know, understanding of why we should be doing this, right? So when we look at that 3-year rotation and the removal rates that we should be applying: 550 pounds of potash, 462 pounds of MAP, or in the US, you know, somewhat equivalent to DAP, it'd be, you know, probably a little lower rate with the higher or similar rate of P there. And then in our area, we're using urea as the example, 683 pounds there. When we work out that total requirement, that's 15 metric ton, or just under 17 short ton of fertilizer that needs to go on that 20-acre parcel over that 3-year window. You know, when we look at the cost of that, you know, there's some fairly decent dollar amounts in fertilizer, as we all know. So, you know, that simple $15 to $20 an acre test, depending on the analysis you pick and where you're located in North America, really is insufficient when you look at the thousands of dollars that it's helping you, you know, make decisions on. So really important that we do a better job of that. And like I say, that 20-acre test is a bare minimum. As we begin to tighten up resolution here, we really start to make stronger and more valuable decisions. Next, Scott. So I like this slide. It really helps work through with customers and for the agronomists to understand the value they're getting when they're ordering soil sampling. Now, the example we just showed was that top left corner that gives, you know, the 20 or 25 acre grid or bulk test on a soil test. You know, again, a great solution for someone that's currently doing nothing. Gives you a rough idea of some of the variability within the field, and really helps start to show you, you know, whether your current broadcasts for general farm operation are in line or not. If we look over to the bottom right corner, that is the actual variability within that farm. That is a sensor-based soil sample reading, and so this is the CEC levels, each of these maps. The dark areas are your high CEC or your low-lying darker soils. The light color are the sandy, lighter textured soils. So you can really start to see where the variability is on the farm, how the knolls run through, where the low-lying areas are. You can, if those of you that's seen lots of yield maps, you can almost start to visualize where yield's going to be high and where yield's going to be poor. Okay, so if we begin to look at all those other layers on this page in front of us, we really start to see the story unfold in front of us. Whatever you've been doing in the past, or if you've never seen it before, you can almost begin to pick out which resolution speaks loudest to you. You can start to see some of the problems you may have focused in the past with some of the resolutions you've been using. And it really helps to identify, the kind of where you want to be, what goal you're looking to achieve, and how you want to focus to move forward. So, next slide, Scott. So to kind of wrap things up here, it all comes down to making that right decision for the farm. Soil sampling is obviously the key to properly managing your fertility and your input costs. Deveron and A&L have created a unique solution for everybody, especially in these trying times, to get this field work done in a cost-effective manner without any human contact whatsoever. The data can come from either the customer directly, or more importantly from the advisor themselves or the ag retailer, and we can get the data spun around back to you in a timely manner to get the work done and the recommendation made by that advisor, so that the customer can see the value and get to the field. Soil sampling is a must when we start talking about maximizing yield potential with an agrofield. Without that first layer of information, it's very hard to make a nutrient recommendation that's going to have the most value as possible to the customer. And as that last slide showed you, your soil sampling operation must match the goals of the farm. Okay, you must understand what your outcome is from the data, so that you can really understand what soil sampling solution you want. I mean, if you're looking to just find out if your current blend is at the right level, a bulk sample is probably all you need. But if you're wanting to get into some prescription management, or you're thinking about some nitrogen or seeding scripts, then you're probably going to want to get into at least that 2.5 acre polygon or some of the sensor type based reading. Grid sampling works well, and we'll go from it, but depends on, again, the resolution and what you're looking for. The biggest thing is understand what you're purchasing and have a goal in place so that you can obtain the actual value and get the desired outcome you have from your test. And lastly, we at Deveron and A&L are here to support you and your trusted advisor to ensure that you're getting the best quality information that you can from your soil, and also to ensure that you're getting the recommendations built to you in a timely manner, and we can get this spring season off as successfully as possible, and without obviously too much personal contact with the world we're faced with today. So I'll turn it back over to Scott for some conclusions, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mike and Mike, and for everybody who joined on. We're going to open it up to the question and answer session next. This is our first webinar as we try to understand how to better educate people when we can't move around, and we may be able to do more. As we continue on, everybody that's joined today, we'll send you an email link if we have any other additional education series. And I've already seen several people ask, can we get a recording of this, a copy of the recording? So yes, we'll send out a copy of this webinar to the attendees, a full recording. I'd also like to encourage people, if you have questions, you can either type them in and I'll answer them along with Mike as we go here, or we'll open it up to verbal questions here in a second. And then also, we do have a podcast called Precision Ag Made Easy, where Mike and Aaron and some of our other agronomists dig deep into more precision ag techniques. So expand that also. And with that, I'm going to open it up for any questions. Mike, or Mike, I've got a question here. Our examples indicate that 1 acre grid intensity gets pretty close to the soil optic maps. The question is do we recommend 1 acre grids versus soil optics? Is there a hybriding sample solution that may be able to incorporate multiple data layers? Mike, can either of you talk around that about comparing soil optics to 1 acre grids and maybe incorporating other data layers?
Sure, absolutely, Scott. And yes, I agree with that comment completely. When you get to that 1 acre grid size, as you can see from the map in front of us, it does do a fairly decent job of representing what you're getting from soil optics, but usually the cost of the 1 acre grid is quite substantial over what you're getting from the soil optic layer. I believe if you do a hybrid version, as you can kind of see with the 2.5 acre polygon on that slide, you can get something very similar to soil optics map, or maybe a little bit less of a cost, but that again depends on the field in which you're sampling and the variability found there. The unique thing about soil optics is you're not really comparing apples to apples. Soil optics is a very interesting tool. It's new in the marketplace, and it does bring extra value to the table that we don't see with traditional soil sampling practices, but it's also doing things in a slightly different way. If what we're showing here today is using grid or a polygon-based test, where every single one of those polygons and every single one of those grid samples is actually a bag of dirt going to the lab using a traditional practice. Right or wrong, that's up to the advisor and the customer to determine what they find to be the best fit for their farm. Soil optics uses a slightly different approach where they're actually measuring an actual true reading with a sensor across the field. Then they're calibrating that sensor, and the data is then sent out to you in a different format. Very accurate, just different. What I also like about soil optics thing that you don't get on a traditional soil test is it gives you things like percent sand, percent clay, percent silt, water holding capacity, and some things like that that could potentially be useful when starting to look at some nitrogen scripts or some feeding scripts or something like that, if that's something that you want to take your operation or your customer's operation to. So again, both have a fit. Comes down to cost, and I would say the goal of what the soil sampling operation is, and then yeah, pick the tool that best fits. Absolutely. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. And gentlemen, we have 3 more questions at least, and we'll continue on for a little bit of time as long as everybody wants to keep asking questions of either Mike, and we're still being helpful. The next question is how do we make our polygons, and if you compare our polygons with soil optics, is there any weighting that goes either way?
Yeah, so the more data, the better for polygon creation is crucial to your success. You can draw polygons off of one layer if you and the customer know that layer is 100% accurate of that field. But when we draw polygons, we're working on some automated tools, but we look to have at least 3, if not 4 layers. Obviously, yield is king, corn is best. We use elevation layers, bare ground soil color to see if there's any soil type that way, are probably the top 3. And obviously, the more yield we can get, the better to start normalizing things and looking at trends over time. When we compare that to the soil optics information, soil optics doesn't build zones at all. It is truly and uniquely a sensor-based reading that measures each individual nutrient on its own. So every map will look slightly different. Your phosphorus map will not look like your potassium map, which will not look like your magnesium map. I mean, it is a true sensor reading, and it is giving you what that sensor is picking up as it drives across the farm. You can make zones from the data from soil optics, but again, because each map's slightly different, each zone map potentially could be different as well. So slightly different approach, again, a slightly different cost, but again, knowing what you're purchasing is important, and absolutely gets you to the goals you're looking for.
Now, thanks, Mike. Mike's the next question is do either of our companies define the polygons, or do growers need agronomists to do that for them?
Either way will work. I mean, if you'd like us to draw some polygons for you, that is definitely a possibility. But of course, we're usually in most cases have never stepped foot on your farm, don't know the field history, so on and so forth. So I would say if we do that for you, that would be step one. Approval from you, the customer, and also approval from your agronomist would be key in identifying a successful set of polygons out of the gate. Ideally, if your trusted advisor is capable of drawing some polygons on their own, then by all means, we would be more than happy to use those layers and get things going that way. That would probably be the best route.
Thank you. So next question, and we've still got 3 questions, so they keep coming, and we'll keep answering. Next question is which level of soil sampling typically matches the variable rate fertilizer application tools?
As far as resolution or lab analysis, I would say I'll answer both to save asking a question. On the lab analysis side, depending on the goals of your operation, usually the basic with zinc and manganese is more than enough for commercial application today. And that's what I would say 90% of the customers pick as a lab analysis when ordering a site-specific sample would be the basic with zinc and manganese. If we're talking about the soil sampling resolution to match the custom fertilizer application, I would say with commercial equipment, folder equipment with a 70-foot boom, we're looking at probably 70 by 70 foot squares in reality as that truck drives across the field. So anything less than a 2.5 acre polygon starts to get tough for that truck to manage, depending on speed and time. Again, that can change based on equipment, the controller in the cab, and everything in place. As we move to strip tillers, farm-owned equipment that's a little bit narrower and a little bit more precise, if we're talking about fertilizer down with a planter or things like that, then yes, we can start to tighten up that resolution and get into the 1 acre polygons or the soil optics type things, and you'll start to see some better success from that. But as you can see there on the screen, if we get into some of those really tight, long, narrow zones, and we've got a truck that can't change very quickly, that's the reality of it. And we need to be critical of that and understand, as I said earlier, what are the goals for the sampling, and what equipment do we have available to us as a producer to get the job done. And there's no sense overpaying for resolution if we just can't get the job done on the back end.
Next question is, how do we convince market gardeners and colony farms that are growing horticulture crops to start soil sampling? How do we get them how do we get people who have not bought into soil sampling and testing to buy into it? And then right in line with that is there any recommended intensity levels for these people?
Mike, can I let you answer that one and maybe talk a little bit around some of the fertility programs that A&L has in place that might help the horticulture crops and market garden people understand that a little better?
Sure, we do have a complete set of recommendations for just about every horticulture crop across Ontario in the West and into the States. So we do have, standard recommendations that we can make based on soil test results that you would send to us. So we can at least get the recommendation part, and they're focused on production, obviously crop production, and also quality based on years of internal A&L research and tweaking the recommendations and fertility rates and products. So we do have that as a good background. As far as convincing a customer that it needs to be done, I mean, there's some of the slides we showed earlier on, the amount of intensity especially for some horticultural crops, is even higher than our corn, soybean, winter wheat rotation. So there's a lot more value involved in the crop and most horticultural crops. So I think the economics part is a lot easier to show kind of a return on investment on those crops.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, and I think that's key here. The soil sampling for those types of markets and those types of customers is absolutely crucial to have a good understanding of the base. And then using some of that material available helps them really understand how they should build their nutrient programs. That starts to open the door around some tissue testing in season to see if that's actually following through and into the plant. And I know there's a whole wide of recommendations to be taken from there. So excellent. Thanks, Mike.
Next question is what is our recommendations for someone who has never soil sampled? Where is a good place to start? And I think you both may have answers for that.
Yeah. Again, I would say that would be a good discussion piece to have, and would love to doing that, with each of you that have that question. But things to think of on your own and to start are, again, what equipment do I have at home? What are my capabilities to manage the results that I get back? And what are the goals for my operation? If we've got some new equipment sitting on the farm with the ability to do some variable rate technology, either seeding or nitrogen, and I'm dealing with a really high-end ag retail that has the capability to do some variable rate fertilizer applications, then I would probably start in that at least 5-acre polygon to 2.5-acre polygon to really start to understand how those fields are behaving and how I can really start to get the best out of the equipment I have on farm and things like that. Now, if I'm a customer that's just looking to tweak my overall blend, I don't have a lot of equipment at home yet or today. I don't have any yield data or anything, or my custom guy isn't capable of doing that, whatever that type of question is, then I would probably look at something like a 10-acre polygon, or even some zone sampling for that matter, as a place to start. Just let's start looking at the high ground versus the low ground with maybe some mid ranges. That's going to start breaking yield in the high productivity, low productivity, give you an idea of what's happening on the different soil textures on the farm. And it's going to be at a relatively low cost out of the gate to just help you start to manage things slowly. So again, that's kind of a loaded question, but it all comes down to the equipment you have at home and how fast and how far you want to ramp this up.
And Mike from A&L, is that good or?
Yeah, I think that's so well done, Mike. I would just add that even the simplistic sense, you're looking at a couple different production zones within a field that you described, and just showing the differences in variability between the two. And essentially, the more you sample, the more variability you're going to show. So if you can start with 2 or 3 samples in a field of 50 acres, 20, 25 acres apiece, and show that variability, that's just a good place to start.
Next question. I'm sorry, you didn't hear my question. Have we overlaid soil optics file points with traditional soil sampling point files? And have we been able to compare like actual value of traditional soil sampling with actual value of soil optics? So have we compared them, and have we been able to do the ROI analysis on both types?
Yes, to some degree. This example in front of you right now is exactly that. That is how the field tested in each of the different ways, and that is the actual soil optics reading on and in the bottom right corner. So there are differences. Sometimes they're extreme, but in most cases, that soil optics measurement is fairly close, or at least within line to what we get based on, you know, the traditional sampling approach, if you will. Remember, when we're doing the polygon sampling or grid sampling, we are averaging the results within that specific area on the map. So the tighter the area we draw, or the smaller the polygon size, the less averaging that occurs and the more accurate the results, which is what you can see along that bottom row of images. And obviously, the tighter the polygon and the less averaging that occurs, the more accurate and more closely it begins to represent that soil optics data. As we go to those larger zone sizes or the larger grid sizes, the averaging becomes very great, and the resolution and the quality of the data goes down, and that's where we start seeing the really big differences in the data. So again, it all comes back to that cost versus value proposition to you as the customer, and what you need for the operation. And obviously, as we said earlier at the beginning of the presentation, if only 20 to 30% of customers are sampling across North America, doing any of these on this page is a better step than doing nothing at all.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Mike. I don't have any more written questions. I'll leave this up here for about a minute, and I'll keep talking to see if there's any questions that want to close out. But we have addressed all of the written questions so far. There was a couple people who had requested some specific questions to themselves, and we typed the response in there. If you asked me a specific question to your specific operation and you didn't get answered what you need, please reach out to us, because some people had sent in anonymous questions, so I don't know who to talk with. But please reach out to me, and we'll help get those answered if I did not answer you when I typed the response. Did have one more question at least come in, and this question is for large fields such as quarters or halves or more. The question is, what is a good resolution either for grid or polygon? They have a 76-foot feeder or cedar. Is there some recommendations, at least how to get started, and where do you go from there? Mike Wilson.
Yep. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, sorry. So industry standard today in that approach is more of the zone type based approach, where we take a yield map, or the competitors take an image or something like that, classify it into 4, 5, 6 ranges, and then go one soil sample bag from each of those zones. That's not a bad place to start. Honestly, it's not. If you're not doing anything different, or not doing anything at all, it's a great way to start identifying, you know, your tops of your knolls, the bottoms of, you know, in your sloughs, or the salinity spots, you know, things like that. Works great. The challenge becomes, are all the tops of my knolls the same? Is it poor yielding or poor vegetation for the same reason? If we're putting all that dirt in those tops of knolls or in the bottoms of the low ground into the same soil test bag, are we averaging the results, and are we missing something? And that gets to be the discussion that we would have. You know, how do you break those apart? How do you start to do things differently? For the scale of those quarter sections, half sections, full sections, you know, you might want to break it down into, you know, maybe some larger size zones, just to get a feel for what's happening. Maybe you want to take a couple different soil tests and a couple of the knolls to see if there is a difference, just to do a gut check and have a feel for, does that sampling match the resolution good enough for your operation, or do you want to spend a little bit more money and, you know, increase your resolution of soil sampling to get some better results? And the answer to that question all depends on the soil that you're blessed with on the farm. You know, you have a lot of variability, then you have to spend a little bit more money on sampling. It's as simple as that. We need to measure the actual dirt in the field, not just guess at what we think is there.
Thanks, Mike. So that is all of the written questions. Again, I'll talk for another minute or so and make sure we don't get any more questions that come in. This is our first of our series of webinars. If you found value in this, please let us know. You've obviously got our emails and phone numbers. If you have some specific things that you would like either of us to talk about, such as precision ag techniques or laboratory recommendations on sample types or anything like that, please let us know and we could queue those up for future educational series. We did have an email that came in direct earlier to ask if we could work to get these for CCA credit, and that's a great idea. We will work with both CCA organizations to get down that path as we develop out this education series. Everybody knows that these organizations, it won't happen tomorrow, but we will work towards that path. And thank you for that recommendation who sent that in. With that, I don't see any more questions. I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. And I would like to thank both Mikes for your input. And Mike Fogert or Mike Wilson, do you have any closing remarks? Oh, I'm sorry, I just had one more question. Well, it was actually a comment. CCA credit's a great idea. So we agree with you. Mike Fogert, do you have any closing remarks?
No, just appreciate everybody's time this morning, and if any questions of A&L, please forward them on to me, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
And Mike Wilson?
Yeah, just kind of thank you everybody for your time and taking the little bit out of your day here. We've got a lot on our plate here with the world as it's changed here in the last couple of weeks. It is business as usual for us on our end, and we're here to help. So, happy to do so and happy to meet each and every one of you and work towards answering those questions you have and helping you reach your goals on your operation with your trusted advisors. So, be safe, everyone, and take care.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.